They actually need time behind bars because what they're doing is they're now farming these crimes for clout.
What Chud the Builder is doing, the reason that I compare him to Rosa Parks, is he is pushing boundaries.
You're just trolling people. You know that's ridiculous.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
No. The reason that we're in this situation is because there is a massive double standard applied to whites.
You're just pushing race identity victim nonsense.
Calm down, put your feelings aside, and let's actually talk about the law here if you want to know how this case is actually going to come out.
If your mom parks in the disabled parking spot at the grocery store because she's just being lazy and I see her behaving badly, I can call her a fat, and that's fine.
No, I don't really think that is fine.
This racist streamer's tears are absolutely delicious.
I'm going to set initial bond at $1.25 million. $1.25 million.
That was Dalton Levi Eatherly, aka Chud the Builder, in court on May 15th, having his bond set at a whopping $1.25 million, meaning he's still sitting in jail as we speak, facing attempted murder charges. This guy got big for live streaming himself in public, going up to random black people not doing anything wrong and calling them the N-word to try to provoke and monetize their reaction. He's what's called a nuisance streamer, meaning he essentially has no actual talent or knowledge or insight and just uses public provocation to get attention and monetize his content. Then, after he gets a reaction out of these black people, he accuses them of chimping out. He seems so lovely. Anyway, in the least shocking twist of all time, given that this dude made his career, profile, and following in the most obnoxious way imaginable, he's now descended into seeming criminal behavior. On May 9th, he was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct and theft of services after filming himself live streaming in a restaurant, using racial slurs, and then walking out on a $370 bill. Then, after being released on bond from the first batch of criminal charges, you would think you'd be on good behavior like you're supposed to. No. Instead, he got into an altercation with a black man outside of a courthouse just days later, ultimately firing his gun and being charged with attempted murder. He's now claiming self-defense and has set up a give, send, go that claims his fight and his struggle is somehow about free speech. He somehow actually does seem to have supporters out there because they've donated, mostly anonymously, of course, $252,000 and counting, usually referencing white solidarity or something. Some influencers have even got on the record in support of Chud, like the self-described right-wing and Christian influencer Peyton Kelly.
I know there's some mixed opinions on Chud the Builder, but regardless of how you feel about his methods, we have to support our people and our right to defend ourselves. $1.25 million bond is literally a targeted attack and a threat against all of us. They are blatantly stating that if you use your freedom of speech in the wrong way, your life and your rights will be taken from you at the first opportunity.
Yeah, no. I actually don't feel any solidarity or non-solidarity with anybody because of their skin color. That's creepy and is actually giving KKK. And while sure, he'll have the chance to defend himself and make his self-defense case in court, it's not legally or morally justified as self-defense if he initiated and escalated the confrontation. So if you ask me, well, of course, everybody's entitled to due process and fair treatment under the law. Nobody should be supporting this man or fundraising for him or rooting for him in any way. He's a menace to society. And the fact that this is even a question, or that there are actually people out there fundraising hundreds of thousands of dollars for such a odious and despicable person, is a bleak, but unfortunately utterly unsurprising at this point, reminder of just how cooked our society actually is. But that's just my take, and the debate is only just beginning. All right, joining me now, we've got the right-wing British commentator, Dan Tubb, from the LotusEaters podcast. Dan, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Brad.
Absolutely. This is the point of the show, is to hash out different perspectives and have dialogue, even on contentious issues. And I will say your commentary on this had me scratching my head. On Twitter, you compared Chud the Builder to our generation's Rosa Parks.
Absolutely.
You've said that you back him completely. I got to tell you, I find that to be perplexing, but Here's where I'd like to start. Before we get into the specifics of this instance for which he's been charged with a crime, let's just talk about him in general. So this is a guy who is a nuisance streamer. He goes out live streaming in public and causes a scene, goes up to random black people, calls them the N-word, slurs, tries to provoke a reaction. To me, that seems like just a despicable thing to do.
He doesn't really do that, Brad. I mean, I'll admit I hadn't seen him until a few days ago when the controversy popped up, and I looked at some of his stuff. And generally, you find he's meeting people where they are. If black people are talking to him and they're perfectly respectful, he's perfectly respectful back. What he does is, if he sees them acting out of line, which for whatever reason, I don't know why, but doesn't seem to take very long, say they're parking in the wrong place or behaving badly, he calls it out, and then the energy that he's met with is what he responds with.
I've seen a fair bit of his content. I can't say I watch hours and hours and hours of his stream, but I have seen him have minor altercations with black people and just start dropping the N-word with the hard R, and that seems to me wildly antagonistic and inappropriate, just like a cruel thing to do to random strangers because they parked wrong or something.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, if you're going to be blocking fire exits and just generally behaving in a way that you would not yourself, I mean, the essential question here is everybody going to be held to the same standard? Because I can tell you, I would absolutely call somebody out if I do. If I see somebody who's perfectly able parking in a disabled bay, I call it out. If I see somebody blocking a fire exit on a building,
would you call them a slur?
I will call it out.
Would you call them the N-word?
Well, it's not really an issue in the area that I live because it's almost an exclusively white area. But yeah, if I would call out anyone who behaves badly.
Okay, but are you calling out the behavior they're doing wrong? Like, hey, asshole, you're parked in a disabled spot. Or are you saying, why are you parked in a disabled spot, slur? Like, I don't understand that. Why wouldn't you attack the thing they're doing rather than just start attacking their identity in racist ways?
Well, I think it does. And look, if they are going to act aggressively towards him, look, you have to understand this is not happening in isolation. This is not an incident that has come out of nowhere. The reason that we're in this situation is because there is a massive double standard applied to whites. Behavior that we would not get away with is often excused. Yeah, I mean, let's look at this particular incident. Okay, so he was leaving a courthouse. There was a man who had said on social media that he was going to go and get Chud. He'd driven for an hour to be there to cause a confrontation. I could understand there was a lot of assumption that this incident occurred because Chud was going around being obnoxious to perfectly innocent people and calling them names and all the rest of it. No, this guy had driven for an hour to be there. And he accosted him. He attacked him. He jumped on top of him. He started punching him.
Well, hang on. How do you know that?
Well, because we've seen the video. I mean, we've seen some of the stuff that's come out.
There's no video of the shooting. The video cuts in after the shots are fired.
Okay, but I mean, look.
So you can't tell what happened in the aftermath. The arrest warrant says that he escalated the confrontation by reaching for the gun. Chud did.
Okay, well, I mean, I've seen some stuff. Okay, and look, I put my hands up if the stuff that I've seen is completely wrong. But there is audio that's come through of the paramedic attending him saying that he's got cuts and abrasions on his head. He was a sort of look.
Because the whole fight happened, but that doesn't tell you who started the fight.
Sure, and look, if it turns out there's good evidence that Chud just walked up and shot this guy, then absolutely, he should go to jail. But actually, I think what happened is that this guy assaulted him, he attacked him. We know that he drove an hour to be there. Well, because we've seen what this guy has put out. I mean, it's been shared. And look, if it turns out all of that is an AI fabrication, then fine, he should go to jail. But from everything I've seen so far, suggests that this guy was there to provoke a confrontation, and he got it. Let's just turn this around. Let's say a white guy had driven an hour to have a confrontation outside a courthouse and attacked him and started punching on him, and then the other guy pulled a gun and shot him. There wouldn't be any of this for her. The problem is that we are held to separate standards. At a minimum, we should be held to the same standard, and that simply isn't happening.
So, but my question here is, I don't think we actually know that this guy just started punching him and then Chud drew his firearm. I don't think we know exactly what happened. We can only go based on the arrest documents, and there is surveillance video that will be introduced at trial but is not available to the public. But I get what you're saying about if this guy came and instigated a conflict with Chud, that would be, a sign that he was part of the problem. So the flip side there, though, is that Chud very clearly was going into these situations looking to antagonize and start a fight where he could kill someone. So here's a tweet from Chud on May 7th, so just a few days before this happened. The series finale is a dead on the pavement and you monkeys rioting when I walk free. Stay tuned. So that's going to undercut any claim of self-defense, because clearly this streamer was going around looking for a fight to escalate so he could kill someone. That's not what self-defense as a legal mechanism exists to serve.
Yeah, look, and I agree. He's almost certainly going to go for jail for a very long time, like Derek Chauvin did, even though Derek Chauvin didn't do anything wrong. He followed procedures exactly. In the court, it was emerged that, okay, even the prosecution agreed that he did not have the knee
that's
on
a
the
whole
neck.
separate issue. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No, it is the central issue. The central issue is that people are held to a different standard across the first world. And if you're white, you are held to a simply higher standard. I mean, you can see this in the bail conditions you got. You can see it in the fact
How
that...
so?
Well, that it's 5 times larger than the largest fine for a similar case.
Do you know why that would be, though? There's actually a totally non-racial reason for
the
that.
average. So
the reason is that the reason for that has nothing to do with race. It's because he was already released on bond from another arrest and charged just days before. And when you're on bond, then violate the terms of your release, they hit you with an extra large bond to keep you in prison. It has nothing to do with him being white. You're just pushing race identity victim nonsense.
Okay, and is it your position that white people are treated exactly the same under the legal system?
I don't think there's systemic discrimination against white people in America.
Okay, well, I can understand why you're coming from that then, because there clearly is.
Like, what's okay based on what?
Well, judged on the behaviour of the legal system. You know, it's not just in your nation; it happens in my nation as well. So, I mean, just a few days ago, the video that you referred to earlier when I talked about Chud the Builder, there was a guy in Southampton, not far from where I live. He was a young 18-year-old university student. He was walking home. A couple of Indian guys aggressed on him. They stabbed him. And then when the police turned up, the Indian guys who were older and bigger than him, they told the police that he had been racist. So what the police did is they put him in handcuffs and they watched him drown in his own blood on the floor after having been stabbed. There is this. That's
horrible, but that's an anecdote in the UK. Is not proof of systemic discrimination
and you get these anecdotes every single day. This happens all the time. You see quite often black criminals let off with very minor sentences. I mean, take Irina Zelenska. I mean, there are hundreds of these examples where they do something horrific and they are repeatedly let out of jail time and time again until they kill somebody.
That's a problem, but that isn't because they're black that they're let off.
And this is why I support Chud the Builder, because what he is doing is he is pushing boundaries.
So you do support him. You're like, he might go to jail for decades and he might have killed the person unjustifiably, but I do support him. I do back him. Here's his give, send, go. Give him money.
No, I mean, what you're suggesting, what you've been asking me before is, okay, if a completely different set of events had transpired. Look, I'm not saying that I support him irrespective of what he did. If it turns out he did something completely different to what it seems that he did do, there are circumstances. I'm not saying that there are no circumstances which I think a white person should. Of course, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there is a separate legal standard, and that white people are held to a radically higher standard. And the legal system needs to start treating people fairly. Now, what Chud the Builder is doing, the reason that I compare him to Rosa Parks, is he is pushing boundaries.
You're just trolling people. You know that's ridiculous.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
It's absolutely ridiculous. She was resisting a racial apartheid in America.
And that's what Brad's doing.
Brad? I'm Brad.
Chud, sorry. American names throw me off. We don't get a lot of those around here. That's what Chud was doing. Now, look,
I'm sorry. So he's resisting a non-existent racial apartheid against white people in America by going around calling random black people monkeys and chimps and calling them the N-word.
If you believe there is that the double standard is non-existent, then I can understand why you'd think that. But I do.
Okay, but it's not freaking Rosa Parks civil rights era. Even if you think there was some systemic bias against white people in the criminal justice system, which I actually think data indicates the opposite. But even if I granted you that, you can't actually seriously suggest it's remotely comparable to a system of Jim Crow segregation we had here in America with separate drinking fountains, sitting at the back of the bus. Literally, you can't have this job. You can't work here, you can't go to this school. You're seriously making a comparison there, not ironically.
No, this is not ironic. I would rather
Oh my
have to
God.
drink out of a separate water fountain than have a family member attacked and then see that person walk free because some liberal judge has decided, but there's too many black men in jail and therefore they don't need to be treated the same. And the comparison with Rosa Parks, I am 100% serious about that. Rosa
Oh my
Parks
goodness.
was put up to it. She was an agitator. This was a prearranged
She was an
stunt.
activist.
Yep,
Yeah.
and she went out and she did it to provoke people.
Well,
Now,
to protest a system of racial apartheid against black people, which is a noble
Yes.
cause.
yes, fine. Yeah, fine. I
That's what
accept that.
activists do. They initiate situations they can then legally and socially challenge.
I tell
True.
you what, at the time, if there were podcasts there would have been people saying that why was she provoking people? Why did she do that? It's because she was making a point. This is what Chud is doing. He's going
By
out
calling
there, he's
people slurs on the street and monetizing it.
So do you think black people don't use those slurs?
I think they do. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think, and so, I mean, like I
I
say,
don't think
haven't
that's
watched all of his
comparable to white
videos.
people calling black people racial slurs, them using it for each other. No.
So it's fundamentally different, is it?
Yes. Yeah, the
Okay.
meaning of and significance of words is different based on context and social relations. Yes.
Now, look, I don't go around saying that because I'm generally quite a polite guy, but
So you did say you might if somebody's in your parking spot or in a disabled parking spot.
well, I don't know if I'd go there, but the point is, I would call people, and I do call out people if I see them misbehaving, if I see them doing something they don't do. Now, like I say, I'm from a white area, so it doesn't particularly come up for an issue around here. But yeah, I call people out if their behaviour is out of line. And the videos I've seen of Chud, that's what he's doing, and then they become very aggressive, and they, to his phrase, they chimp out.
That's
And
a
then they-
racist phrase, though. They just say they're angry. Why are you making it a chimp thing? That's just intentionally racially inflammatory.
Well, I'm not saying that.
Come on.
that's
Say
what
it
he
with your
does.
chest. You are saying it.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to get mad at you. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
But don't hide behind the I'm just quoting him. You clearly are echoing
Well,
him.
it's not a phrase I naturally reach for, but I mean, whatever. I mean, as long as it's descriptive to the point. But there is a behavioural standard. There is a massive, and your point earlier, you talked about the you push back on my idea that whites are treated differently in the legal system. Well, and you pointed to actually no, it's the other way around. That's because of criminality. That's because of a propensity to criminality.
Well,
And
they-
we have
even
to
so,
pretend
even when
that that's
white
not
and
true,
black
but
people,
it is true.
even when white and black people are charged with similar crimes or the same crime, there's disproportionate sentencing and criminal justice outcomes in a way that is worse for black people. In the U.S. criminal justice system, I really can't speak to the U.K., to be clear. I'm familiar with the U.S. system of criminal justice, and there is ample evidence. You can debate the scope of it for sure, and I think it's often overblown by progressives who want to claim America as like an evil, dystopianly racist society. But there is some evidence for sure supporting the idea that, if anything, the U.S. criminal justice system treats black people disproportionately worse. There's really no statistical evidence that white people get harsher sentences for the same crime or anything like that. That doesn't exist.
Well, look, I can't speak to the rest of those statistics or the people who compile them because quite often this is very agenda driven and it's incredibly easy to manipulate statistics. All I can tell you is that every day I see examples of, and you might say is anecdote, but no, it's pattern recognition.
It's an echo
It happens
chamber. You're on
consistently.
Twitter and you see the same videos because you engage with them when you see them. A black person behaving badly, like, share, repost on my podcast. So of course it shows you more than that. That doesn't tell you any statistical reality about the world.
All I can tell you, look, I've been podcasting for about 4 or 5 years now, and it is our job to engage with these stories as they come up. And every day for those 5 years, I've been seeing example after example, and I am noticing a pattern. Now, you can say, okay, well, this left-wing organization has produced these statistics and they say something else. But I'm just telling you, I see a pattern here.
Okay. A couple final things I want to get your thoughts on real quick, kind of rapid fire.
Sure.
If your mom parks in the disabled parking spot at the grocery store because she's just being lazy and I see her behaving badly, I can call her a fat and that's fine.
No, I don't really think that is fine. But look, my mother.
But earlier you said that was justification for calling black people the N-word.
No. The cases I'm talking about is when you get some 20-year-old kid turn up and he bounces out of it with his baseball cap on backwards. He's clearly not disabled.
How does the direction of the baseball cap matter? Whether you can call someone the N-word?
I don't know what you're driving at there, Brad. But no, look, if people are behaving, look, the issue with our countries is that poor behaviour is not called out, and it should be.
I agree, but I think it's poor behavior to antagonize people,
society,
and call them slurs, to monetize it for rage bait.
Look, the videos I've seen of him, that is not what's happening. He
Which
calls
you
out
admit is not that much,
and then they get up in his face, they get aggressive, and actually most of the time they're using that word that you don't like before he does.
Okay, that's not the same. So let me put this in context, right? I'm a gay person, which is obviously not relevant to this conversation. Another one of my good friends who I make content with is also gay. If we jokingly call each other that is obviously very different than if a person corners me in the street when I'm with my husband or boyfriend and starts screaming at me I'm a disgusting. You understand the context and the in-group, out-group does make the word use different, and that's not some double standard. It's just how language works.
Screaming anything at anybody in the street is not a particularly good idea. But to give the example, if you were behaving poorly in public and somebody had a confrontation with you, and you got up in their face and you're getting aggressive and you're screaming, and you start screaming that at them, and they scream it back to you. I mean, this is an argument. No, look. I mean, let's go back to the Rosa Parks thing. She went out in order to provoke a reaction to highlight a difference in the system.
Yes.
Chud has done the same thing. I looked into this. There are apparently 10 statues of Rosa Parks across the US. I think there should be 10 of Chud.
Good grief. All right. Well, I'll just be honest. I think you're just doing a contrarian bit. I think you're just being edgy.
I'm really not.
You're just being antagonistic, and that's fine because you know what? Whether it's Chud saying slurs, I'm not going to support him shooting people, probably, in my view, indefensibly, but I will support his free speech right to be an asshole,
Brad,
and I will support yours to be a contrarian.
If somebody is attacking you, if somebody has jumped on you and is punching you, if that is indeed what happened, okay?
It's not, there's just no proof of that.
There's no proof of that. We don't know exactly what happened, but if somebody jumps on you and starts punching you, do you have the right to defend yourself?
Absolutely. But we have no reason to believe that's what happened.
We have no reason to not believe that's what happened, but neither of you and I were there, so let's find out.
All right. Well, I do appreciate the spirited conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Enjoyed it, Brad.
I enjoyed it as well. Thanks so much. All right, guys. Joining me now, we've got the YouTuber and lawyer, Legal Mindset, a.k.a. Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure, Brad. Thank you for having me.
So I watch your content all the time. You cover these people, these nuisance streamers. I hadn't heard that term until I heard you say it, but it describes these people very well. Whether it is Chud the Builder, this guy who goes up and thinks it's a talent to yell the N-word at black people and try to provoke a reaction. And we'll get into his legal controversies, which you've broken down in great detail. But just at the surface level, I mean, what is your personal reaction to these nuisance people? Because I find them to be maddening.
Yeah, they're actually such a plague. There's actually a specific word in Japanese now for these streamers. And we just today had an incident where American influencers jumped into the cage of Punch the Monkey, if you remember that viral incident, in order to gain clout and pump their meme coin. So this is a trend that's going around. Obviously, Johnny Somali, who I've covered, is the textbook example. Vitaly Zorovatsky in the Philippines. And what it is essentially relying on rage bait, relying on doing things that are very, very offensive to get those attention clicks, like instant virality, because those things will get shared, they will get passed around, they will absolutely make the news. And particularly if you're doing things that can be monetized quickly, that's a good way to monetize. So I think a lot of these people, when they see their viral spike, they don't they don't really care. These streamers don't really care that it's coming from a lot of bad attention or coming from people that are hate watching. They just care about the virality. They just care about the numbers. That's all they care. And it's like a drug to them. They get that hit of clout, they get that hit of virality, and it goes crazy. All of a sudden, people are writing them, they're sending their emails, and they've never had this before. They're not people that have been streaming for years and years and years and slowly built up an audience. Now, maybe, if you're a streamer like myself, we can do cases that are more popular and you'll spike in virality, but generally there's a long trend up, right? So you're covering things over a long period of time, you're generally going to be trending up. That's a lot different than somebody who just goes viral and gets that hit. And once they get that reinforcement, they keep escalating and doing more crazy things because they're addicted to that viral moment.
And you actually provide some kind of value, crazy take, because you have legal analysis and you have insight and you're able to read the case law and break down a case in a way that provides value to listeners. I like to think I'm able to provide some kind of value, but I think unfortunately a lot of these people have no talent, no charisma, really nothing to offer viewers. They would just be irrelevant. And rather than, be good people and find some other way to contribute to society, they become addicted to this attention. Now, I do want to focus in on the specifics of the criminal charges against Chud the Builder, aptly named person, because his whole shtick, as people know by now, is going up to random black people on the street who've done nothing wrong and saying the N-word to them to try to provoke a reaction. And then he was involved in these, alleged criminal activities, like walking out on the restaurant bill, allegedly, and now he's got this attempted homicide charge. We'll come to each of these in turn, but first, I see some people describing him or his case as some kind of like a free speech issue. I don't really see it that way. Do you?
That's comical to me when they talk about free speech issue. First of all, none of the criminal charges, both for the restaurant, the theft of services, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, or the other charges in Clarksville for attempted homicide, possession of a weapon, aggravated assault, none of those involve freedom of speech. So the First Amendment is only really meant to protect you from the government, right? That's what the First Amendment is there for. It's not intended to give you unlimited ability to harass the general public and other private individuals. So that's one of the limitations I think that people miss out on, is the fact that the First Amendment is really there to protect you from the government impinging on your rights. You do not have unlimited rights to harass people or defame people. If you were to commit defamation, you are liable for that. If you were to harass somebody, engage in some form of what is criminal harassment, that's not okay. So speech is not unlimited. That's a myth, and it's a framing that's unfair to what his conduct is, because his conduct is in no way expanding free speech. This isn't some sort of college debate. This isn't sort of engaging with influencers or doing what you're doing, right? Having conversations where both of people consent to the conversation and you can have a debate, you can argue about something. If you wanted to have an academic discussion on the use of the N-word with another influencer and debate that on the internet, right?
Sure.
That's a lot different. That's a whole different scenario than a random bystander on the street that you are trying to provoke for rage bait. That's the primary content of nuisance streamers, right?
And
That's
he's also not actually being charged for saying the N-word.
No.
Right? He's, as disgusting as it is, he is allowed to say the N-word in public. That's not illegal in America.
Correct. Just like with Johnny Somali, who wasn't charged for, anything involving the comfort woman statute there, which is the most controversial thing. Many of these people, their most controversial things, they're not actually charged for. They're charged for an actual crime. So people trying to move that 8-ball are really ignoring the criminal elements here, and they're really not able to assess the law fairly. So what I say to start out with people is to calm down, put your feelings aside, and let's actually talk about the law here if you want to know how this case is actually going to come out.
Yeah, and we should talk about, obviously, the incident where he had a firearm. He had this incident with somebody outside of a courthouse. The arrest warrant, the local reporting suggests that Chud the Builder actually drew his gun and initiated the kind of escalation here. But his supporters are claiming self-defense. You went through on your channel, and I'll link to your channel, of course, that everyone should check it out. But you went through the elements of self-defense here, and you came down with a pretty skeptical analysis of whether that looks likely to succeed, right? Can you kind of briefly talk us through that?
Sure, yeah, you have to go through all the elements of self-defense. Now, self-defense is what we call a affirmative defense. So, the risky part about an affirmative defense is you have to say, "I did that." So, you are admitting to the crime. So, if if that defense does not work, you are guilty. There is no you've already confessed to the fact that you did the thing. So, they can get you on that charge. Now, ultimately, whether they get him on attempted homicide or get him on the aggravated assault, right? He may, get convicted on one of those versus the other, even if the self-defense fails. So just because self-defense fails doesn't mean that he gets convicted on all the charges necessarily, right? But self-defense is as affirmative defense. They have a stand your ground law. And there's several elements, such as lawful presence, lawful conduct. Are you allowed to be in that place? Are you not committing a crime? And we'll give those to Chud that at the time he was allowed to be at the courthouse. He was not breaking into somebody's house. He was allowed to be
in public.
There. But then you get into things like, like, for example, reasonableness, right? The reasonableness of the behavior in terms of was he in a reasonable fear. Now, that's subjective to him, so it's from his perspective, but it has to be objectively reasonable. And one of the problems with that is for a normie jury looking at this, these are not people that are on the internet chronically. These are not people that are Chud stans that are out there supporting him. And by the way, this jury, even if it's conservative, may have a couple black members on the jury, right?
I'm sure they're going to love him.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly. So maybe there's a couple black members, but even if they're all a bunch of conservatives, they're not going to be diehard internet people. So I think that's a very important thing he needs to consider. And when you look at that, I think most normal people looking at Chud's behavior are going to say, is this objectively reasonable? And that's going to be a hard line for them to cross. The other thing is proportionality. So he responded with a gunshot, which is deadly force. Typically, you cannot respond to non-deadly force with deadly force. So there's going to be a lot of analysis on what exactly went down. Was the punch qualifying as deadly force? Now, for a punch to qualify as deadly force, it would have to be a severe punch like a head blow or something like that. So we're going to need a fact pattern to play out that looks favorable to him responding, thinking that this could kill him, that this man could kill him, or that he had reasonable belief that this man had a weapon or was pulling a weapon on him, and therefore he responded in that way. The other thing is you cannot be the initial aggressor. You cannot essentially provoke the interaction. This one is particularly dangerous. And this is the one that people try to conflate with free speech, but this is separate. This is about self-defense law, right? In order to gain access to this defense, you cannot have provoked the fight. Essentially, with self-defense,
even verbally, though, I guess clear that up for us. Does a verbal provocation count?
A verbal provocation can count. Now, this is on a case-by-case basis, which is why we have to see more evidence. We have to see how it plays out, right? But it's very possible that the jury could rule him calling someone the N-word as a provocation, as provoking a fight. They could look at that and say, you know what? Because he used that language, this does not apply. Right? This defense doesn't apply. Now, a lot of people say this means that the other person would get away with violence. Well, not necessarily. Both of them could be charged, right? So there's many use of force cases where both individuals are charged in that case. So they both could be responsible. It doesn't necessarily make one off the hook here. So,
and to what extent does his intent matter here? Because we do have these past statements that are really horrifying. He's on clips, clips of him from talking about this, but also past tweets. I'm going to read this, but it's actually genuinely horrifying. He just a couple weeks ago put on Twitter, the series finale is a dead on the pavement, referring to a black person, and you monkeys rioting when I walk free. Stay tuned. So to me, it suggests that he has this statement, and you could tell us whether this is legally relevant. It seems relevant to my moral judgment of this person, certainly. But it seems that he went out there looking to potentially instigate a situation where he could then kill someone. Is that relevant to the law here, though?
Absolutely. His history of confrontations and his live streaming and his tweets are absolutely going to come up as evidence. Now, it will be even more damning if he has to testify as a witness. And the thing is, in most self-defense cases like Kyle Rittenhouse, which is one of the first big cases I covered on YouTube, oftentimes it is very beneficial for that person to get up there on the stand and testify in a self-defense case. So if we have him coming up there, there's a lot of evidence as to his character that can come in, the character evidence, and all of this stuff is going to come in. All these tweets are going to come in, certainly the one that you read. And I think when a jury of normal people, total normies, right, not internet people, hears that language, they're going to think that's extreme. I think that most people would think that language in the United States is extreme. So that can go towards formulating that. Now it's up to the jury to decide whether they feel it's that way or not. Some of my LawTuber colleagues have said they don't think that they think it'll be very difficult to get the requisite intent for attempted homicide. I think it's possible, right? It is possible. I certainly think that amongst the charges that he's charged with, I think they can get him on at least one of them, right? So, he's got multiple charges. I think it's at least possible to find the requisite intent for one, and I think that goes towards it.
Well, I would love to see that because I think we need to send a message against this type of behavior and these people who are trying to enrich themselves at the public expense, offering no value to society other than just menacing people. I want to get your thoughts on another legal aspect to this, though, because I have been perusing the depths of hell known as Twitter, where people, a certain crowd of, at times very openly racist influencer has been defending this person. And one of the arguments that they make is they'll pull up, essentially it's like a two-tiered justice kind of argument. They'll pull up another case where a black man shot and killed someone or shot someone or somewhat similar incident. Thankfully, no one died in this incident. But and then maybe it's in the same state, but a different courthouse or different court district. And they'll be like, the bond was only $250,000 for this, and Chud the Builder got $1.25 million. This is a penalty against whites. This is two-tier justice. They get away with this, but and they start doing this kind of demagoguery thing. Now, oftentimes they're making apples to oranges comparisons in a number of ways, but you also spoke about the fact that he was already on bond, right? And that comes from the first charge. That comes into effect here, right? Can you explain that for people?
Yeah, correct. And two things can be true. You can say that there are activist judges that are a problem in the United States. There are people that should not be released. I think in the case of the famous case of Irina Zarutska, I would very much agree that person should have not been released multiple times. So that can be a problem. This thing can be true. But also we can say that Chud the Builder's bond, given his factual circumstance, his specific facts, is actually within the range of reasonableness. As a person who was already out on bond for the Nashville incident, which was just recently, so this was just a few days ago, and then coming into another incident, this shows a pattern of behavior. And when you especially look at this through the nuisance streamer framework, with nuisance streamers who go out and create a pattern of escalating events, the judge is required to think about community threat. So they're required to think, what is the risk they're going to go out there and do other things or end up in other criminal situations? And with Chud,
pretty high.
Yes, exactly. With Chud, it's very high. It's extremely high. It's essentially his MO. He's getting himself into these situations just days apart. So when you look at Chud, you have to say, no, this is very much a thing. And they can't look at the fact that he was live streaming and monetizing it for profit. And I think that is a fair factor. Most of these people that they're trying to compare it to were not live streaming, monetizing. They didn't have communities throwing up, $200,000 of support in a few days as he had on his Give, Send, Go. So clearly he has the capacity, Chud has the capacity to bring in a lot of money and monetize this, which is an incentive for him to go out and continue that behavior if released. So I think the judge was not completely off base here. That said, do I think some of those cases that people bring up on Twitter are unfair and they should be given higher bonds? Yes, I do, right? But I can think both of those things at the same time. I can hold both of those thoughts at the same time.
Yeah, if anything, that would be a good reason to have not let those people get off relatively easy, not to let this guy get off easy.
Correct.
And he would. And I don't know. I don't really believe he's getting special treatment because he's white and these other defendants were black. That seems pretty unlikely to me.
It's preposterous. It's pretty preposterous. I think given the factual scenario, you're not going to have any world in which there is outside a courthouse, multiple gunshots, where there's a crowd, there's bullets ricocheting, and the police are just going to say, and law enforcement, the judges are just going to say, oh, no, it's totally okay. You can walk free with a slap on the wrist. There's no world, and there's somebody who's shot, right? Regardless of who that person is. there's no world in which this person just walks away scot-free. And it's even worse with his tweet, where he says in that tweet, which you read, that he's just going to walk free. So clearly he's got this hubris, this ego, that he can do whatever he wants, perhaps because he thinks he's immune, perhaps because he thinks he's white. I don't know why he thinks he can get away with it. But certainly the judge, within the factors of the law, was well within his realm to issue 1.25.
So look, obviously I'm a big believer in due process. He's going to get his day in court. He's going to get the chance to make his argument to a jury that he was defending himself. And I obviously don't know everything there is to know. I can't reach some final verdict. I can certainly say I'm very skeptical from the outside looking in that he was truly just defending himself and didn't instigate this with the pattern of everything we've discussed. But it will all play out in the court system. I guess the final thought here from you on this issue with these nuisance streamers, how do we stop this? How do we send the message? I think you called him America's Johnny Somali, which I find hilarious.
Yes.
But what do we do about this? Do we just need high profile examples where they go to jail for a long time, or how do we stop this trend?
I think we need that and more. We need highly publicized cases that everybody hears about where these people are being punished. And one thing I brought up and make sure to bring up in this discussion is the restaurant incident. That's a high-end restaurant he walked out on. He wasn't dealing with an African-American there. He was dealing with the white manager of the restaurant that he was very rude to, continued to film without permission, engaged in.
Not just racist, also just obnoxious.
Obnoxious, right? And I think with one thing I proposed, and I've talked about this in my coverage of all the nuisance streamers, is I think we need to add on, just like a firearm enhancement for crimes, we need to add on a live streaming or a monetization or some other enhancement.
I love it.
Because if these people are out there doing this, they should be punished more severely. They shouldn't be getting probation, etc. They actually need time behind bars, because what they're doing is they're now farming these crimes for clout. They're farming their criminal history, just like Clavicular. Now he talks about it, jokes about it, etc., because he got a relative slap on the wrist and got sent out. And they just continue to do more, and it actually helps them monetize because people will cover them. They'll get a slap on the wrist and they'll go back with even more eyeballs on them. If they're sent behind bars for 6 months, a year, 2 years, they're not monetizing during that period of time. So there is a financial penalty for them while they are behind bars. So I think real jail time needs to happen for these people, and that is very, very important. And looking at the context of all of their crimes, once again, I think going back to the restaurant, I think they look at those charges and they say, you know what? We normally give him a suspension or probation, something like that, suspended sentence. We're going to give him some jail time on that as well. So getting these guys consistently punished, I think, is key.
Absolutely. I'm rooting for it as well. All right, Legal Mindset. Andrew, thank you so much for joining the show and for your
It's been a pleasure.